Welcome to the Talk Spot. This is Marcus, and today I'm joined again by Reuben Langdon. Reuben, thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks. Again, apologies. We got a little long-winded last time. We weren't able to finish it up, so hopefully today we can go a little deeper and finish whatever conversation we get going here.
Great. Yes, I guess where we left off last time, going down the rabbit trail a little bit. We talked quite a bit about extra dimensionals and ETs, but maybe if you wouldn't mind, maybe briefly, I guess, kind of talking about what you think that they are and maybe their impact on humanity and who's suppressing information about them.
Yeah. So, we sort of use the term extraterrestrials because that's what's that's sort of the nomenclature for in our mass media and how it's been presented. These otherworldly people, they come from the stars, and I happened to, through all this research, that was sort of my first take on the whole thing as well, that they're star people. But the more I dive into this research, the more I'm discovering that they're not necessarily from just the stars, so to say. They're more from another dimensional realm. And yes, they're in a linear sense of space-time. If you go out into, say, the Sirius star system, then you might bump up against some other types of life. But when you think about evolution, you think about our evolution, you think about how things are going, there may be, and not just evolution, but also our science and our studies, we're talking about ideas like the multiverse, the holographic universe, those are sort of terms floating around mainstream science these days. And we're sort of able to prove, getting closer and closer to proving that these theories of these multidimensional realities exist. So sort of taking that into account, when you think of an extraterrestrial, how we usually see it, we know through just hard science that they're not getting here in a linear sense. They're not shooting through the space with rockets, and otherwise they would be, having to live in their ships for many, many years to do that. And we haven't seen any of that. There hasn't been any evidence of that. Maybe ancient alien evidence, perhaps, but at least in our modern day, the beings that are reported, the craft that are reported, sort of come and go on a whim without landing like in a rocket ship or something like that. So we'd have to imagine that they have the capabilities to bend space and time. And anything that has the capabilities to bend space and time, probably it's coming from another dimensional realm, as opposed to the way we think in the sense of a linear sense. So if we were, for example, if we were to all hop on a rocket ship and travel at the speed of light and go out to Sirius, which is sort of the closest star system to us, 4.4 light years away, we would perhaps we would find life there, but it might be primitive life. It might be slightly more advanced than us in that sense. Probably what we would discover this is my guess, and right now, is that we wouldn't find these futuristic civilizations that we sort of imagine we see in the movies. And my guess is, and not my guess, but what I believe is that these other civilizations that are now come from a more evolved space-time now. For example, in Sirius, if we meet those beings, we're being visited by their future selves, or by our own future selves to some extent, that are able to, travel through space and time in this. And if you can bend gravity, you can travel through space and time, as we've sort of kind of proven in minute ways in labs and things. But it's so hence the term interview with Ed, extra dimensionals. And that also includes other crazy out there ideas like, you know, elves and fairies and other dimensional planes like in Earth, you know, Lord of the Rings type stuff, where we perhaps could have parallel timeline realities where Earth evolved in a different direction, so to say, not in its technical way that it did through reverse engineering craft from the Roswell crash. You know, that there was maybe another parallel timeline where they didn't have extraterrestrial assistance. Maybe there's another timeline where they didn't have hybridization through extraterrestrial intervention, which is the theory and the belief system I have for why human beings are human beings on this planet, and we are so different from you know, our other hominoid relatives. There's a, you know, that missing DNA link, so to say, that scientists haven't quite been able to figure out. So there are timelines when maybe those our hominoid ancestors did not have ET intervention, and perhaps that is when we see these dimensional realm blends of these furry people walking through the woods, and we call them Bigfoots. So there's all sorts of kind of parallel realities, other worlds, extra dimensional beings, and consciousnesses that can sort of blend in with what we got going on here. And I think it's much greater and much more vast than just putting the term extraterrestrials and sort of thinking in that linear way.
So you brought up this idea of, you know, other dimensions existing alongside ours, or even alternate universes. Now, there's one idea I want to talk to you a little bit about, and obviously we talked about this before the interview, was this idea of, you know, superpowers. And I mean, it sounds like a joke when people first think about it, you know, people in tights doing incredible feats of strength, or flying, or running fast, or just having some other kind of psychic powers, or whatever the powers may be. But I feel like if you really look at a lot of our media today, and especially, you know, with this weekend with Endgame coming out, the Marvel movie, and it seems like there's just a really big fascination with basically superpowered people. And I don't know if, and this is why I guess I want to get your take on this. Do you feel like, is that some kind of, I'm trying to think of what would be the proper term, some kind of preconditioning, I guess, for the masses to believe in this idea of super people, and then they're going to be introduced to us? Or do you feel like, is this just, you know, it just so happens to be that this is just in vogue right now? Or, I mean, I guess what are some of your opinions about that? And do you think that, is there some kind of a little bit of propaganda for this happening right now? Or I guess, yeah, what are your overall opinions?
Yeah, perhaps it's funny. I just earlier, 4 hours ago, posted on Facebook a Zero Hedge article that went into the telepathic Russian troops, you know, that were trained for psychic warfare. And it also, in the article, they're releasing unreleased documents from the Department of the Army, the CIA, and stuff like that, that sort of go into the secret programs that the U.S. also had correlating with, you know, the Russian stuff. And this is stuff that's been declassified since 1991. But, you know, they made the movie when Minster Goats with a couple famous cats. Who are those people? My mind's blanking right now. But George Clooney, there you go. And we have documented accounts of this, and it's just sort of, you know, it's been released, it's been out there, and if people look into it, they sort of can figure this stuff out. But why now? Yeah, that's a good question. Like you were saying, what's all this, you know, the superhero movies? Why has this stuff sort of been out there for a long time, but we're just hearing about it now? We're just sort of catching on. We're just showing interest. You know, Wim Hof, the Iceman, this guy's a Superman. He's doing superhuman feats, and he's teaching other people how to do superhuman feats. And I think we discussed that in some of the other interviews. I don't remember, but I've been a Wim Hof practitioner for a couple of years now. And other people, Tibetan Kung Fu monks who can endure extreme cold. There's the fascination with Ripley's Believe It or Not, and these so-called superhuman people who can move things with their mind, or catch bullets in their mouth, those kinds of crazy things. So half of it's real, half of it's not. But I think it's making its way to the masses is because we all are waking up to the superhuman potentials that humanity has always had. And we just need to unlock those doors. And part of the unlocking is this idea of disclosure, to understand that, we're not alone in the universe. We're greater than what we had thought we were. It sort of goes hand in hand. When I say we're greater than, it's like not necessarily we're greater than, but our universe is greater than. Our potentials are greater than. We used to think, going way back to the Wright brothers and flying, right? Oh, it's impossible. It can't happen. It can't be done. And then, within years, they do it. And within years that they do it, we're outfitting propeller planes. Then we're finding jets. And, look at where we've come in just the past couple hundred years. It's astonishing, the rate of evolution, just because it goes hand in hand with our minds and what we're limited. Like we're limited by our minds and by our perception of reality. That's the way I perceive it. So the greater you can think in terms of what reality is, you take off those limitations. Therefore, you're able to introduce new ways of doing things. And we see it from our point of view right now. Like, of course, flying is possible. Of course, jet engines. Of course, stealth fighters and all these other things. But as soon as you say, well, wait a minute, anti-gravitic machines traveling through space and time, we're like, whoa, that's pushing a little bit. Of course, all this other stuff has been possible, even though 100 years ago it couldn't even be even thought about. But but of course that's the norm now, and that's easy. And of course we join that. I can't believe those people were so dumb back then. But now we're looking at, gravitational waves, or affecting gravitational waves to create, zero mass in an aircraft or something like that. Which, by the way, today I just posted the U.S. Navy secretly designed a super fast futuristic aircraft resembling a UFO. That was in the Metro article on my Facebook. And in it, it goes into saying UFO style. Like, wait a minute, why? How do we know what UFOs, how do they work? And it actually goes into some of the technologies that I've been studying for quite some time. And mentions the ATIP program we've talked about before, but it also goes into, affecting the gravitational waves and creating zero mass in an object, and literally bending space and time. So these things are a possibility. We have a patent, which probably means it's in some secret. The fact that this is even getting out is astonishing. Like, all this stuff is finally making its way out to humanity in little nuggets. But the fact that we're even using our mind to even expand, to areas that thinking of, faster than light travel and these kinds of things, it goes hand in hand with the super soldier idea, the telekinesis, superhuman abilities. It's all wrapped up in my eyes in the same bundle. We're using robots and other things, developing robots to do that as well. But it's all going hand in hand. And it's funny how we can accept if somebody gets a robotic superhuman arm that can lift things, but if somebody uses their mind over matter type of situation like Wim Hof, that's hard to believe. But wait, he did it. The guy can actually, hold his breath for an incredible amount of time. He can swim under the ice. He can, not get hyperthermia. What's going on there? He can run a marathon barefoot in the desert with no water. This is incredible. So they're sort of all evolving at the same sort of pace. We're having people using external ways of developing technology so they can traverse space and time, but then we also have these superhuman people coming online that probably have already been there for a long time, but at least humanity's waking up that, oh, it's possible, it can exist. And wait, if I practice this meditation stuff, if I practice breathing, I might be able to bend reality too. Oh my God.
Mm. So who would you mind talking a little bit more about that guy that you mentioned that can run a marathon with no shoes on and can swim in freezing water? Like who is this person? I haven't heard much about this guy.
Oh, Wim Hof. Yeah, I thought maybe I've gotten. I'm going to apologize. Maybe in other interviews I've gotten into that, but um, yeah, the Wim Hof method. I've been actually no, 3 years now. I've been a practitioner of it. Yeah, just Google Wim Hof method. There's some great documentaries. Vice did a great piece on him. There's a guy who recently put out a book. Um, he was like the main debunker of debunkers. Like he goes around debunking people and their claims. And he went to a Wim Hof seminar and he came out like, oh my God, I'm an absolute believer. I practice it every day, and it's the feats, the amazing physical feats and the power gained from it. It's basically controlling your autonomic nervous system so you can release adrenaline and serotonin and those feel good chemicals at will, but without the cortisol releases that you usually get in a sort of in a typical fight or flight situation.
Wow.
And he's teaching MMA guys. He's doing, a lot. It's catching on really quick. I'm surprised just the past couple of years how big it's catching on. But we're in that consciousness. We're in that state now where everything is opening up. Our minds, our views of reality, our perception of it all. It's being opened up like a can of worms very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a little bit of the idea of disclosure, that all of this stuff is kind of coming out right now, and you have, basically you have big publications or you have large media companies that I feel like would never have reported on some of this stuff even 10 years ago, and now they're running articles. Like you mentioned, Zero Hedge running the article about the psychic power training and the Russian soldiers and the Soviet Union, and I feel like I've personally heard about that topic, 14 years ago or something like that. And, but it was kind of buried, it was buried online. Right. It would be on a conspiracy website that had a lot of different, other things on there. But now, I mean, these are big topics that are.
You probably never thought it would ever make mainstream.
Yeah, never. And now it is. I mean, even, terms, I think we might mention this last time we spoke, the idea of even like the Illuminati. I mean, that's something where most middle-aged and young people know what that is. And I think I might have mentioned this last time we talked. I mean, I remember talking about the Illuminati 10 years ago and doing a presentation about it. And, everyone was like, well, what the heck is this? And now, I mean, you've got people like Roseanne Barr talking about MK Ultra on the news. And that interview happened, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago. And it's just out there and everyone kind of knows about its existence. So for me, I guess there's a part of me that thinks, this is good that all this disclosure is happening. And, it's good that people are kind of more in the know about what's happening behind the scenes. But there's another part of me that thinks, I wonder if there's something nefarious happening where, I don't know if there's so much other stuff that the government's done that they've tried to kind of leak out some of it because they have so much that they're hiding, or is there, I guess, an agenda behind what they're doing? I guess that's something where I kind of wonder a little bit of the motive of why does it seem like they're more willing to leak or talk about things that, they never would have talked about. I mean, I remember Hillary Clinton, she did an interview with Jimmy Kimmel. This was like right before the 2016 election. And he asked her about Area 51 and she said, I definitely want to look into that. I thought to myself, like, you were the first lady in the 90s. Like, didn't Bill have access to Area 51? I mean, right? I mean, if you or I, it would be, let's get a look at it. We've never been that close, but she was in the White House for 8 years. And then she worked with Obama as a Secretary of State. It's like, how many more years do you have to be in the White House before you get access to it?
Well, I have lots of information about all this stuff. If you want to go into it, that's been my world for the past 10 years. So, right quick, yes. There's an interview that I think you can still find online. It's on our Citizen Hearing um, page. I did an interview with ex-CIA guy who was on his deathbed, and this was in 2013. And he gave his testimony about Area 51 and how it basically got cut off from Washington, or it was. This was in the Eisenhower days, and back then the laws and the separation and the compartmentalization was there, but nothing to the scale it is now. And you didn't have all these different groups within our government doing all this infighting. So when the Area 51 guys stopped communication with Eisenhower, he was getting pissed. He wanted to report. And he even threatened he was going to send the army troops in to raid Area 51 if they didn't respond. That was like a joke. The CIA guy said, and he was ordered to go with his supervisor, the two of them, to go in and do an investigation. And they went, and he claims at that time that he actually met with a live extraterrestrial. This is in the early 50s. Or he didn't meet, his supervisor met, but he saw it through the glass door. And they're developing, they had retrieved material. You can watch the Lazar documentary my buddy Jeremy Corbell put together. And what happened is the secrecy, like Lazar said, he had the classification of majestic, which, a clearance classification called majestic. And, what we have in our open books, we think that behind the doors, we know how government runs and that there's these different groups, but we sort of have an idea that Q classification is the highest classification that's out there in the military. That's what we're told. There's things that are so classified that then even the names are classified, right? So you can't even access them, even if you're the president, even if you're the president's wife. So back in the 90s, there was a big dig from the Clintons to go into and try to figure out what's going on in these compartmentalized, highly classified, above top secret, above majestic classified programs, right? So Lawrence Rockefeller, one of the Rockefellers back in the day that had lots of money, he also had been privy to the information and was getting close to his up there in age, and he was sort of feeling guilty that he had been keeping this information from society, and he was going to run he was going to spend $3 million on paper ads and run on the front page paper that UFOs are real. And he was talking about this. I think he had meetings with the Clintons about doing this. And they had sort of said, well, hold on, let's talk about this. And there's evidence that shows that there was many meetings with Lawrence around this time. There was books in Hillary's hand that she pictures taking where she's doing research on the extraterrestrial phenomenon. So they were finding out about it then, and then trying to get more access to these programs, these special access programs. My take is, and she wants to get access, therefore she was going to blow the lid on what she knows, probably. And then, that's why this ATIP program too is sort of part of that. I think it's a division within the military that's trying to figure out what's going on. But I think we have programs, again, higher than the ones that are been created, and they go even higher than what, president. We think the president runs the show. Hell no. he's just he's just doing his thing. So, to try to keep the public and Americans and everybody, keep the illusion going, right? This is, yeah, we vote on things and we know where the budgets are and all this. And this is why you're seeing now in the news, the audit of the Pentagon. Where did all those trillions of dollars go? What's going on with all this stuff? There's a lot of missing money. It's unaccountable. And now we're starting to hear whispers of secret space programs and secret projects, that are special access programs and these kinds of things that not even Congress is privy to. Congress, when I met with the Congress members during the citizen hearing, they knew there's black budget programs, but they didn't know what they're about. And they're sort of told that they have to sign off on them no matter what. Like, that's just what you do. You want to keep your job, you sign on the dotted line and you keep the money flowing. That's how this all works. And that's why you have Hillary Clinton going on Jimmy Kimmel, like, I want to get to the bottom of this. Of course she does, because, maybe there's some technology in there to make her live longer. I don't, whatever her motives are to get that information out. Does she want it to get out to the public as well? Yeah, maybe she has some good intentions there. Thinks that this shouldn't be a secret anymore. So that's a long-winded answer, but I hope it answers some of your questions in there.
No, and I feel like you kind of alluded to this idea of, I mean, ultimately kind of something that I feel like you were talking a little bit about was the idea of the deep state. And I've definitely kind of thought about that for a long time, that being that regardless of, who the president is or who the senator is or, what party controls which house of Congress, it seems like a lot of the same stuff happens regardless. I mean, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. You think to yourself, okay, regardless of, who's the mayor of your town, there's always going to be cops. There's always going to be firemen. There's always going to be ambulance drivers. And, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That way you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, if we elect the wrong person, my life's going to go to hell. I mean, that's a good thing. But you do think about some of the larger issues where it's like, okay, now we're talking about, wars, and now we're talking about soldiers being stationed in other countries. And you think to yourself, like, so does it even matter kind of who is the person, in the White House? I mean, does that really impact things? And I think that it does in a lot of regards, but
sure,
there are certain issues where, I mean, you're talking about this, for example, like Area 51. I mean, Area 51, I mean, that what would that have lived through? What, 8 presidencies or something like that? I'm trying to think of how long ago Eisenhower was, but I mean, we're talking, 1950 to 2020. I mean, it's 70 years.
Yep.
And
no, there's definitely, the president does have say in a lot of things. Most of American affairs are set up in this system that we still sort of go by the rules and, throw in our votes and make things happen in a specific way. But yeah, certain topics like the UFO topic, like these exotic technologies being reverse engineered from UFOs, there are forces out there within the government and beyond government that just don't want that stuff out. It would not be good for them. So they sort of keep it going. They sort of keep the lid on it.
Mm. Do you feel like it was during Eisenhower's administration that these kind of secret, I can't even know if I want to call them secret, but these other, alphabet agencies, do you feel like they really took a lot of power like around the 50s?
Absolutely. You remember, or maybe you don't, just Google Eisenhower's exiting address. He addresses and he talks about the military industrial complex being its biggest threat to America.
Mm. Yeah, I'm familiar with that speech.
Yeah, so there's a reason he goes into that and the timing and everything else. It's about these compartmentalized groups that are getting absolute power over things, and they want to keep it all a secret. And that's not what America was initially built on. And I think what's happening is there are people who are at these higher there are higher ups at these agencies that we and groups that we don't even know about, that are actually getting a conscious, that are actually starting to say, well, wait a minute, this is not right. We can't enslave humanity like this forever. And I think they're starting to break some of those barriers down. Obviously, they want to have a nice long life until their elder years without any major crazy drama, but they kind of, I think, are thinking, if we do full disclosure now, I'm going to be hung. I'm going to be dragged through the trenches and I'm going to be hung. So if we just do it nice and slow and easy, so everybody doesn't make a big fuss, and we kind of pretend that we didn't know any of this stuff until now, we're just figuring it all out right now, then maybe, people will be happy that they're getting this information now, and they'll be, we can transition nice and lightly into this new era where these technologies do exist, and I won't be shot and killed and hunted because I've been keeping it a secret for 70 plus years, 80 plus years. So that's my take on why we're getting the information we are now in these nuggets and the way we're getting them. And it is going to speed up exponentially because I think they actually don't want to keep humanity enslaved, or maybe they can't. They're realizing, okay, humans are figuring this out, whether we keep a lid on things and try all of our MK Ultras and false flags, and we mess with society and tweak it and try to put a lid on it as much as we can. I think they're finding out that actually they can't. It's inevitable that humanity is going to wake up. The 100 monkey effect is coming into play. So let's go ahead and just make this stuff available in a nice, smooth, slow, palatable way, and then humans will wake up to the fact that we don't need to be burning oil and pushing 200 plus year old combustion engine technology, that we do have advanced technology that doesn't need to take the toll on Earth and its resources. We can actually have renewable energy that's way more advanced than any of the stuff that's currently out there, like solar and wind. Like that stuff is just kids stuff compared to what's actually out there. That's just not readily available, but that's changing. So we're moving into this disclosure era where disclosure is not just disclosure of an ET presence or a race or existence. It's the disclosure's full spectrum, from humans realizing we have superpowers to free energy technologies and spaceship technologies that allow us to travel interdimensionally. This is the full disclosure. This is what comes with full disclosure. Total cleanup of our planet, the regeneration and elevation of humanity to all become, to get no more poverty, no more wars, no more griping about, this ridiculous keeping these classes that we have going, and these, the rich and the poor in the middle and everything in between. Like, all that is, all of a sudden, instantly, humanity is uplifted because we're no longer dependent on that's how classes are made, is because they say, you need me, and the only way you can survive is to give me all the money you make, and we're going to enslave you and keep you doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, but it's just going to keep putting money in our pockets. Like, all of those class systems, all of that stuff breaks down, and immediately everybody is empowered, literally empowered. Imagine a power unit powering everybody's home, the size of a shoebox, that doesn't need any kind of fuel, that can power everybody's home and car and everything indefinitely without needing to burn or destroy or rape and pillage the earth for its resources to make that thing run. That's what's around the corner.
Do you feel like, I guess when it comes to the power structure of today, do you feel like the media is a component of that, and I guess large corporations that basically control most of the content that people digest.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're looking at the same compartmentalized agencies and groups that have been keeping the secrets. They are the ones. They are the richest, wealthiest corporations, peoples, individuals on the planet. And if they are running the show, so to say, well, it's not difficult to create media conglomerates as they have. We've talked about this. Six major corporations own 99.9% of all of the media out there. So they're going to push a specific narrative, an agenda that's going to only serve them. And unless you don't have a, anything to lose, so to say, like yourself and myself, and we're going to do our own research and come up with our own facts, so to say, by doing the groundwork. We don't have an agenda to push other than that there's an agenda going on, and waking people up to the fact that, hey, there's an agenda here, and let's look at that. Let's not be blind and blindly follow the Pied Piper over the cliff. Let's figure out what's actually going on here, because if you look at things and you look at the mainstream narrative, they're definitely trying to steer you down a specific path. And we know this with the Q phenomenon. We know this with our energy. We know this with scientific discoveries, or scientists being bought and paid for to give specific agendas, to media that's already also bought and paid for, and they're going to write their articles to sway the public opinion in a specific direction. Propaganda, 100% propaganda from all of our major news media outlets.
Well, I mean, I feel like when it comes to the media, or even content dissemination in general, it seems like to me, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, like there is an agenda that is pushed, but there's also, I don't know. I mean, like, it's not like necessarily every piece of content that gets put out is something. It's not like
no. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I just mean at the top. We're talking at the top. So you have the little guy doing his thing. Like me, if I were to go to work for a news agency, I'd be doing, journalistic. I'd go to school to get my journalistic degree, to do these things, to understand, the truth, and to wade through it, and not to be biased. I'm sorry, not to be biased, to be neutral, and in the best way as possible, see it from both sides, and report as we have our founding fathers for this country, great reporters, freedom of press. One of the biggest parts of this whole thing is of our country is founded on journalistic views and freedom of the press. But what I'm saying is they figured it out. Mm-hmm. The compartmentalizations, the big companies, these groups, the so-called Illuminati, whatever that is, has figured it out that if they buy and pay for everybody at top, and these little guys struggle all day to get these stories out, they can mess around with the local stuff, the day-to-day stuff. We're not going to mess with that. Let's keep that stuff all within journalistic integrity, so then that way everybody thinks that it's actually everything all the way to the top is going to be in journalistic integrity. So they're very smart at playing their cards to say, we'll let we'll let everybody do their thing, but as soon as we, certain topics only, free energy devices, UFOs, new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking outside of the box, ways of thinking things that, keep people in harmony as opposed to disharmony. Those big topics, let's just cut those off so they never can fully develop and fully make it out there into the mainstream media. Mm-hmm. So it's very, this is why we have the term conspiracy theory, because it seems almost too hard to believe sometimes. Now it's easier to believe, but just 5 years ago, like we were saying, like stuff like this, Russian. I think 5 years ago, if someone you or me were to say that, the military had secret programs within it that they were studying and using psychic powers and telekinesis, we'd laugh. And we did. That's why there was a comedy movie made about it called "Men Who Stare at Goats" with George Clooney. That it was a comedy because it was just almost ridiculous to even fathom the idea that was even going on. But those programs existed for more than 20 years. They're putting government money into psychic research and development and developing things. And then there's offshoots of other programs that haven't been declassified yet. These are just the ones that have been declassified. So we can see from just our own past and history how this all works. So it's not so crazy to think that there are people pulling the strings at the top of these major news corporations, news and media outlets. So go ahead.
I mean, I was going to say, I totally agree with you. And kind of where I was going with that one point is that I feel like, when it comes to media, there's some people where, they see a wolf everywhere, right? So everything that comes out has this symbol that means this, or this thing happens meaning that, or, they make a lot of connections where everything that's produced in media is always evil and negative. And I do agree that there are symbols that are in media that are trying to convey a secret message, but I don't know if it's necessarily everywhere. But I feel like this whole idea of, the combination of basically media companies are also the same companies that own the major studios and television channels. And, they essentially, they control the narrative. They control what's really talked about. They control a lot of things. And, it's almost like the idea of, even like, Plato's cave, where, you're watching, the shadows happening, and that's kind of what's happening. And obviously, forms of escapism are fine. They're great. There's not everything in our lives have to be, intense and rigorous. For goodness sakes, even stuff that you've produced, you've been involved in stuff that is very beneficial to people where they love, playing games that you're a part of. And that's great. And, people should enjoy things like that. But, there's also that element of, okay, the same guys that want you to be distracted with stuff are the same people that are also telling you the news. So they're basically like largely controlling the flow of information that you're fed.
Exactly. You say it so perfectly. Yes, exactly. It's so simple that why would we, of course that's the way it is. But, and I just love, this is, I know in past interviews I've talked about Q. I just love Q. We're into over a year and a half, coming up on close to 2 years of Q drops. And anybody who's been paying attention to them, it's absolutely, they've all come true. Everything said in the Q drops so far has all come true as the way it was proposed. And in the Q drops, they talk about the manipulation of the media. They talk about the two-party system being, a joke, and how it's all just set up. And it talks about, while Q is saying one thing, the mainstream media is saying another. And why? And then you have to ask yourself, okay, look at all of in the mainstream media, all of this attack on Q, when Q hasn't even, Q has done nothing but prove itself, whether it's a he or she or a group or whatever it is. There's been, 20 or plus Q proofs that are just like statistically impossible. That certain things have happened in a certain way, and you can look at the whole Q proofs things. But it's just amazing that the mainstream media is going way out above and beyond to destroy Q and to call Q all of this, right-wing conspiracy, blah, 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 and all this stuff. So you kind of can see it from that angle that, okay, why is it doing that? Well, there must be truth behind the Q stuff. And there also must be, the Q is obviously calling out the mainstream media as well. So, there's some more truth there. And it just, yeah, when it goes down to the medical system, to, there's a big thing in the news now is all this vaccines and mandatory vaccine talk. And you're seeing the mainstream media spin certain narratives that are not true. We have scientific evidence, we have, doctors, and we know what's inside some of these vaccines, and yet the media is still spinning and pushing one specific agenda, which then affects, so the legislation and these other things. So I don't know. I'm just saying that if anybody has I hate to say, I have to call anybody dumb or stupid, but if anybody has any sort of a brain and wants to look into this stuff, it's so blatantly obvious, especially in this day and age right now, of what these agendas and what they're pushing. And I feel that it's getting greater and greater, the push and the agendas, that it's just making it more and more obvious. So people who may just be coming onto this information can just simply take a look and like, oh my God, look at that. That's crazy. Like, why are we just now finding out about glyphosate and the cancer causing, and it causes cancer, when in the media, just a few years ago was saying, oh, it's all, herbicides, pesticides, they're healthy, they're fine, eat all you want. There's nothing wrong with them. Doctors recommend you have your healthy dose of pesticides. And now we're finding, after these lawsuits finally made it through, we're finding out all the harmful dangers of glyphosate and how it could causes cancer and creates, all kinds of mutations. And don't make sure your baby doesn't have any kind of glyphosate additives or food. It's going to cause, major effects. So, and the media has no choice but to report on this at this point, because we're waking up.
So you mentioned Q. I haven't actually been following up, or I haven't been following his work over the last couple months or so. I mean, what's the biggest stuff that you've heard that he's been dropping recently?
Well, it's been sort of obviously another Q-proof Russian collusion. 2 years into it, we're done with that, and that's over. And everybody for 2 years screaming Russians, Russians. Look at the media and that, right? So from day one, Q was like, nope, no Russian collusion. It's all mass media hysteria. It's all pushing a specific agenda that wants to make things go a certain way. But so we got that, right? We got that in our mainstream news now. And now you see the mainstream news starting to spin their narrative again. All of a sudden, okay, things might not go well for them now if they say go a certain direction. So they're going to be like, okay, well, we better start spitting out some truth bombs. Otherwise, people are going to completely disconnect, and which they have been. Look at, so many people have just stopped paying attention to the news because we're realizing that it's just a bunch of BS, that they're not reporting truths. They're just reporting specific agendas. And we get better news from the Joe Rogans, from, the Marcuses, we get from the guys that are out there doing, their own thing. It's actually a much better, more truer story than these bigger CBSs and NBCs and, all the fancy guys, Newsweeks and whatnot. So their numbers are falling apart. Their viewership is going away. So they're going to have to start telling some real truth bombs to get their people back. And I think we're going to start to. That's why, and again, we're starting to see more of these truth bombs when it comes to whether it's disclosure or political things and whatnot, because it's like, all right, we got to do some real work here, real investigations, and not just deliver the 4 a.m. memo that comes through and regurgitate the same old thing that all the other stations are regurgitating. So maybe actually we'll see some real journalism in the coming years.
Well, I think something that a lot of people don't necessarily realize, I guess, in our society is that, when it comes to the media or television or even sports in general, I mean, they primarily exist to sell you advertisements. I mean, that's how they all make money. I mean, that's how
Sure.
Fox, CNN, MSNBC, they all make money by selling ad space.
Right.
And, so when you kind of have that incentive, and now obviously newspapers are the same way in the past. I mean, they had to sell the paper to make money. So there's always been a monetary element to it, because if not, then it wouldn't exist, because no one would make any money and they wouldn't be able to make a living. But,
Right.
in today's world, I mean, that's really the push is, CNN is owned by the same people that provide your cell phone provider. I mean, your cell phone provider is CNN as well. They're the same company.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, Fred Flintstone, Bugs Bunny, your cell phone, and CNN are all the same company brought to you. And, Fox, I mean, now Fox, at least it is a little bit different after the, restructuring where, they sold off their film and television, and now they're just, news and sports news. So, I mean, at
But
least
they're also owned by Disney now.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's another thing too, is that even though there is this new quote, Fox group, like Rupert Murdoch's sons sit on the board of Disney and Fox. The new, I think it's called New Fox. I think that's the name of the new technical company. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, obviously, do you think they're going to report any news if something were to happen negative with Disney? Would they report it? Absolutely not. Or if
Right.
there was would they ever run a story that could paint corporate, basically corporate sponsors in a negative light? Never.
Right.
They're never going to
No.
do that.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people don't understand the fact that, these are all controlled by that. I mean, the same people that bring you the Washington Post is Amazon. I mean, it's the same
Exactly.
company that brings you Whole Foods. Amazon is Washington Post. And I mean, when you think about it like that, you're like, wow, that is crazy. I mean, there's been so much, I guess I don't want to call it cannibalization, but there's been so much fusion and mergers of large corporations in America today that essentially, I mean, it's so few companies that bring you so much stuff. I mean, even for goodness sakes, Warren Buffett is also one of the largest insurance providers in the country. He owns Geico.
Right.
Or
Right.
whatever it is, Berkshire Hathaway, or whatever it is. And I think people are a little bit, I think that's something where a lot of us don't even really think about consciously. We don't think about,
Right. And what, so if you have these news agencies, which, like you just said, are now just big commercial agencies to sell a product, what's to say they're not going to make up specific news stories to push a certain agenda so people will buy a certain product? And who's the wealthiest of all of these companies that you just listed off are pharmaceutical companies and chemical companies and Monsanto, it's BASF, and Bayer. These are chemical companies that are selling drugs. So if you see one chemical company that's going to sell you a drug to make you better for something, but that same chemical company is selling a herbicide to make you sick, it makes you kind of reevaluate your whole idea. And they all own the news agencies that are going to tell you to consume this and take this. If you're sick, take this. If to keep from getting sick and to be healthy, take this. To grow your food better, take this. Oh, are there any adverse effects that are going to make you take pills that we also sell? No, none of that's happening whatsoever. So it's just plain common sense. At the end of the day, turn off the television. Do not listen to any of it, because all of it, including the political agendas, the things that they're selling, the whole thing, it's all got an agenda behind it. And we have to pay attention to that.
I mean, it kind of, I mean, I will say one aspect or one leg up that, traditional forms of media have over, the people that are, smaller, the people that are just starting off, or, they have their own avenues on iTunes or YouTube or whatever it may be. I mean, the big leg up they have is just access. And that's another big thing too. I mean, we see a little bit of that problem existing today in the film review industry and even to the gaming review industry to an extent. And that's being, are the people, let's say for films especially, I mean, is Variety, let's say someone, I don't know, they work at Variety, and they want to have access to the stars of movies. That's their big thing, is that they want to have a sit down interview, and they want to be the guy that, when Stars episode 9 opens, they want to be one of the people to interview Mark Hamill or J.J. Abrams. So they're never going to write a critical article about that person, because if they do, they're going to lose access. And that's the way that it exists entirely in the film and even to the game industry to an extent.
Sure.
Where, well, even for yourself, I mean, if someone, wrote an article and they said, oh, Reuben's a total a-hole, I mean, you're going to be less inclined to want to sit with them if they're just really mean spirited. But
right. I'm certainly not going to do any more interviews with Newsweek.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for them, I mean, it'd be one thing if someone said something to you where they're like, hey, we think Reuben's work in, Devil May Cry 5 was a little lackluster. I mean, I don't know how you'd respond. I mean, I don't know you necessarily well enough to say entirely how you'd respond, but I feel like you would be more open to that kind of criticism than what Newsweek did to you. Where,
sure. Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it was just totally out of left field and took a swipe at you. But for a lot of these people in these big companies, I mean, they want you to toe the line. They want you to not say anything that's against what they want.
And that's why we have all the issues we have in this country and in this world, because of the freaking hierarchy system. This as soon as we can, this is why the work I do with delivering the message of oneness, delivering the message of we're all in this together, that, we got to get rid of this hierarchy system where someone is better than another person, whether it's a race, a belief system, an idea, a country, a school, whatever it is, like, that's got to go. Because once we get rid of that, once we decentralize or, de-class the class system, and we realize that we're all in this together and we can start helping each other out, not just helping the guy upstairs, that's selling me the chemicals and selling me the cancer medicines, but say, hey, what if we just eradicate cancer? What if we eradicate chemicals? What if we help each other out and show each other how we can all survive, not just survive but thrive? That's what I'm interested in. So we can't change the system. We have to change ourselves to not need a system.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you, and I think that one element that will kind of go in line with that is, I think people have to view themselves as more like conquerors and less like conquered. And what I mean by that is this the idea of, you go to college or you go to high school, then you're told to go to college, and then you're told to get a corporate job, and you're told to, I mean, it's very Matrix-esque.
Yep.
Where it's just, you're another cog in the wheel.
Creating the hierarchy, creating the system, creating the dependency. And that's why my biggest message out of everything that I've learned from the ETs, from the conspiracies, and from studying the monetary system and studying government and all the compartmentalization and the news media and everything we're talking about, the biggest takeaway I've got, the biggest message that's the simplest that we can all to unplug from this matrix is self-empowerment. Yeah, and that's on an individual scale, and it's also on community scale. It's on a city. It's on a nation. It's self-empowerment. If we all can be empowered and not need anything on the external, then we can unplug.
Yeah, because I mean, the system that we live in today, I mean, it's entirely built upon this idea of you have to be in the system. I mean, so even if you go further with that, illustration where, okay, you graduate from college and now you're working at, some corporate America job and you're making whatever, $80 or $90,000 a year. You're making enough to pay your bills, but you're not rich by any stretch. And then, you get a house, then you have a mortgage, and then you have a car payment every month. And you're totally stuck in that system. I mean, it's a literal system where you can never get out. I mean, if if something were to happen to you, God forbid, where, you got hurt or something like that happened, or, you wanted to take care of your spouse or something like that. I mean, you're not even necessarily able to do that. I mean, you're literally stuck in the system. I mean, you're told, per year, you only get 2 weeks per year where you can have a
Right.
break. And I mean, that's the life that, people have. And obviously everyone needs to work to survive. And I think it's good for people to work, because if you're not working, I mean, you can't, I'm sure you've met people where they just sit around all day and they're miserable because they don't have
Sure.
any purpose in life. I'm not
Right.
saying people shouldn't work, but it's the idea of you're a slave in that system.
Yeah. Well, it's about, and a lot of people end up just sitting around because they're just fed up with the system. They don't fit. They're specific. I believe we all carry a piece of the puzzle. Every human child, male, female, black, white, brown, red, yellow, we all carry a piece of the puzzle, the bigger puzzle of the universe, right? To unlock this whatever this is. And once we are made aware of that and sort of, nobody is special, but we are all unique.
Mm.
And we all can add our unique flavor to what's happening here, and to co-create a reality together instead of separate, is then we can teach each other that to hone in on our unique abilities. And we don't all have to become doctor and lawyers and become indoctrinated into the system. um, then then we can truly thrive. And that's when this is this renaissance period I think we're headed to, and I hope to see it in my lifetime, the beginnings of it at least, which we kind of are in the beginnings, but we're truly going to reach that once this hierarchy system sort of falls. We're going to reach that, where everyone's starting to access their true potentials, and that's where we're really going to see superhumans. Who knows? Maybe we will be flying like Neo and the Matrix. Maybe not that far, but with little anti-gravitic boots or something like that, we might be able to do some cool shit.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be cool. I mean, I don't know if I would personally want to do it, because I'm very afraid of heights, but yeah, I mean,
Well,
that'd be awesome though.
there'll be other cool things you could do that'll be equally as cool, without having to, go flying through the sky. but
Yeah.
but no, I think, we're so close to just, the dismantling of the current paradigm, and really getting us, look at the blockchain, look at how fast that's being implemented in almost all aspects of our life. Especially with the cryptos and everything else, but just the whole idea, you're looking at all of these power structures restructuring. They're not necessarily, we don't have to destroy them all, but they're restructuring themselves in a way that are being a little more diverse, more open to these new ways of doing things, giving more people a voice, open source, as opposed to the traditional ways. We're seeing Elon Musk and Tesla and all of these big corporations sort of saying, oh, wait, we can actually make it, if we actually give away our patents and we actually open up everything, we're actually going to lift up everybody else, which will lift up us. So we're all going to, benefit together. And we're finding out all these ways of doing things that are out of the box, so to say, different ways that can actually work so we all thrive. And we're transitioning into that now. And if the media is going to continue to spin its specific narrative for those specific agendas, people who are waking up, about other ways of doing things, about cryptocurrencies, about blockchain, about creating open source technologies and being able to thrive way better, they're just going to choose it and do it themselves. And they're going to tune out from these media conglomerates, and start tuning into other means. Or these media conglomerates will say, we better change our tune, or we're just going to cease to exist. And some may not change the tune, and they're going to fight it, and they're going to go kicking and screaming to the very end. Some may say, okay, we'll change it and start changing things. And then once they adapt to the new way, now they're thriving just like everybody else.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that ultimately, will come down a little bit to the people themselves. I mean, how,
Absolutely.
and I feel like right now, I mean, there's so much potential for people to do great things, and it's happening. I mean, you see people, start companies, and they take off really fast. Or you see people do things that are really cool and creative, and you think to yourself like, wow, that's great that they're doing it. But I also feel like on the same token, I mean, it kind of needs to take like another step forward a little bit like that. I mean, I feel like it's good for people to have an entrepreneurial spirit, but now it's time to kind of make it even bigger. I mean, we're still, I mean, and I don't know necessarily what that looks like, but we're still kind of playing in the world that they've created. We're still playing in the world that Google and Apple created. So even though, there's other people out there that are producing content, even it's still within that system. They're still the ones that, you saw what happened with Alex Jones. I mean, if they don't like what you're doing, they just shut you down and you're gone and you're depersoned or unpersoned, however they say it. But so I don't know how we can create a new, or how a new system could be created ultimately that will kind of take away some of their power. But I'm hopeful that that can happen. And I feel like there's enough creative people out there today that they look at that system. They look at the system of, okay, I go to college and now I'm a nurse, and I'm going to be a nurse for whatever, 35 years. And I'm doing that because I'm told to do that. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a nurse or a teacher, even working in corporate America. There's nothing, immoral about it, especially with teachers and nurses. I mean, they're doing something that's very good and commendable, but it's also very, it's very much, this is what they're telling you what to do. It's like, oh, I'm an artist or blah, blah, blah. I have this skills. It's like, okay, here's the job you're going to do. You're going to work at Penny Mac. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, all right, I want to do this with my life. So, well, there you go. Here's a city job.
Well, I think we're doing it. It's look at all the YouTube channels that are popping up of like, hey, look, I can make money this way. I can make money that way. I don't have to follow in the system. And there's different ways of, the DIY movements of, hey, you don't have to take your car in the garage and do its thing, because now there's a million YouTube videos that teach you how to do it, right? That you don't have to go to this restaurant because that's the only restaurant in town, and plus it has 50 bad reviews. There's another restaurant right over here that has lots of good reviews that people are, people are becoming more involved, and they are having more power, and we're creating the Kickstarters, we're creating the Yelps and these other apps that, the delivery apps, the Ubers, we're going around the system, so to say, with all of these new innovations when it comes to the internet and to our mobile phones and to new technologies that are letting us sort of go around the system. And I think more and more, because people are getting more and more tired of these old systems, including our governments and our ways of getting legislation passed. And, there's so many people more active now than ever, thanks to Trump, and that's a good thing. Most of the people are pissed off at him, but now there's more people that actually know how the system works, that are actually getting involved. People didn't care before. We're getting fed up with the secrecy and this craziness, and they're actually developing these new technologies and new ways that are going to get us to where we want to go and get there so much more faster than was ever possible before.
No, I mean, I 100% agree with you. Before I ask the next topic, do you still have a little bit more time? Because I want to know if you have some time to talk about hybrids. Yeah. So yeah, what are your thoughts about hybrids, and not necessarily only hybrids between extra dimensionals and humans, but maybe even humans and apes? Because I know that there was a Russian project. Gosh, I don't know the name of it, whatever it was, but it was the idea of creating these super ape human soldiers. Have you heard about that?
I think I missed that one. I can't believe I did. That's awesome.
Yeah, there was, I think
It's
it was
crazy.
the Soviet Union. I think they were trying to create, some kind of human ape soldier hybrid. I don't really know where it went, but
Wow.
I'd heard about that. Like, have you researched that topic? Like,
I have not. No, I didn't. I mean, You mean hybrids?
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
know a lot
No.
about hybrids, but not the specific ape
Okay.
soldier thing. That's new to me.
Okay.
But not surprising. I'm like, Jesus. What?
Mm.
So, just yeah. So in general, I think the first part of the question is sort of this idea of human extraterrestrial hybrids. That's a big topic in my series, and we'll definitely dive into that. But just in general, the idea of hybridization, I think it's the natural law of evolution for everything, because uh, we have these two different species, so to say, uh, and they connect and can merge and mix. And usually, the next generation of a version, for example, just if you look at the human race, you take myself, for example, and my wife is Japanese, and if we decide to have children, we're going to have children that are going to be mixed DNA, having both genetic traits of all of the Japanese lineages, as well as all of my European Nordic lineages. So now you have in one person, you have a lot more data, right? In their DNA and uh, in their and they're also going to be most likely grown up in two different cultural backgrounds, both speaking the Japanese language as well as the English language from birth, sort of giving these two languages that are going to be integrated into their beingness. And they'll be able to access those languages on a dime, probably until they die. Um, and they're also, by just osmosis, they're going to learn these different cultures, the Christian sort of based Nordic European culture that I come from, as well as my wife's Japanese heritage, because obviously they're going to meet with relatives on both sides of the family. So they're going to learn cultural and religious traits and ideas and concepts that they wouldn't have gotten if they had just been under one sort of Anglo-Saxon, North American, European background, or vice versa, just a Japanese trait. So the idea of hybridization is for furthering the species to evolve into it's a more data packed version, I think, than these other versions. Does that kind of make sense?
No, no, that makes sense. Well, I guess kind of what I was thinking about maybe more, I guess, falls into the realm of something like a chimera, or this idea of these part human, part other animal entities that exist. And I mean, there's obviously been a lot of artwork of that throughout history, and statues made of men, or even look at the Egyptians, where they have artwork
Yeah,
where it's a human body but the face of some kind of crow, and then
a
they have
dog,
yeah, exactly, and they got stuff like, I
the
mean,
Sphinx. But maybe what if the Sphinx? Uh, well, never mind. I was just going to say, what if the Sphinx actually was a full dog, and
Mhm.
some Egyptian pharaoh kind of uh, you know, got a little full of himself and said, "I want to turn that dog face into my face. Let's do it. Go on, men." And you know that, because proportionately that head is quite much a lot smaller than the dog. And then also, I don't know. There seems to be some evidence of that sort of thing happening. But sorry to get off on a tangent. But yes, we've had a lot of animal human statues in our history. We sort of have these animal archetypes mixed in with humans to give them superpowers or have special knowledge beyond just a normal human knowledge or capabilities. Going back to our hero stuff, superpower stuff. Um, this has been prevalent in our history.
Mm.
Uh, but I believe that when it comes to the ETs as well, or these extra dimensional beings, for their evolution as well, they perhaps reach a a tipping point, or a point, I should say, more a blocking point in their evolution where they can't go any further, uh, or are evolving at a very slow pace because they've already hybridized everything on their planet, in a sense, mixed and matched DNAs, created different species and different mixes, and finally they're at a point where, like, okay, we've done everything we can on our planet. We need some DNA from some other planets. We need some history, some emotion, some whatever from another planet that's unlike ours, and that will further the evolution of our species. So that's my take on the hybridization programs, as far as the agendas behind them and why they happen. And a lot of people are going to think a lot, and I think we spoke about this. I get my interviews mixed up sometimes, but I think we spoke about this in the past. There's a lot of trauma around the abduction phenomenon and what's been going on over the decades. And then there's a lot of questions. Are these agendas and these programs, the hybridization programs, are they nefarious or are they benevolent? I'm assuming, in my take from my research, is that they're benevolent, that they're wanting to further their species and also help our species evolve in specific direction that will keep us from killing ourselves.
Do you think it's possible that, like, let's say if you look at something like the Luchacabra or Bigfoot, do you feel like that could be like a modern day example of maybe if an ED got, let's say, they wanted to be very creative, or they mix human DNA with something else. Do you feel like those could be examples of that? Because I know you kind of alluded a little bit earlier today to, Sasquatch or Bigfoot, when you said, these alternate dimensions or alternate realities that might feature, fairies and things like that. Do you feel like that could be a possibility, that these, you even look at the past, you look at something like the Minotaur and, Pegasus, where it's these kind of fusion of these different animals. I mean, do you think that, is it possible that maybe there was some kind of genetic testing that maybe went on in the past that created these things, and maybe some of them are still around today?
Yeah, I think yes. I think that's what we're seeing, actually, when we see the ETs, or I'm sorry, but the Bigfoots and the Chupacabra and these other monsters and these kinds of things. My belief for the moment, based on my research, this could change tomorrow, but my belief is, yes, there's parallel realities where there has been genetic manipulation, or not, I should say, or a little less genetic manipulation than what we have in our history, in our timeline, where maybe in the lost age of Atlantis, so to say, where we hear about this time where advanced technology existed. Maybe at that time there were beings visiting from other dimensional realities that had high technology and could mix and match DNA and created offshoots. And that is what we see in our lore and our history, is some of these creations from that period of time. And maybe, again, in an alternate timeline, before these alternations even took place, there were regular life forms on this planet that just continued in their own evolutionary pace. And we see bleed-throughs of these dimensional realms sort of bleeding through from time to time. And those creatures are popping into our reality at just the right time or moment. And then they pop back. So there's no or little evidence that they were even here or actually exist here full time.
I mean, that is definitely, yeah.
It's going to stretch, But I mean, this based on my research, this is what's going on, man.
Well, I
We
mean,
live in a wacky world.
do you feel like some of these things, though, do you think that they might actually have, I mean, I don't want to say like permanent residence, but do you feel like maybe there are some that are still kind of lingering here? And I know this kind of gets more into cryptozoology, but you think of something like
Right.
the Loch Ness, or even stories about in the Amazon. I was gonna say Amazonian River, where they'll report saying like seeing like entities or beings or animals that are long since thought to have been extinct. Do you feel like, are there little pockets of where they actually like reside for long periods of times, or do you feel like it's more of
Sure.
a like the break between, like you mentioned, the dimensions, and they kind of temporarily stick around for a while?
I think the stuff that I think it's constantly changing and fluxing. So our Earth vibrates at a specific frequency, and we individually vibrate at a specific frequency, and that's the Schumann resonance. And that, if anybody's been paying attention to the Schumann resonance, it's been off the charts these past couple of years. And there's actually websites where they're constantly measuring the Schumann resonance, and then depending on pockets on the planet, that's when it's fluctuating. Different places and pockets on the planet, we're getting this fluctuation of the Schumann resonance. Not to say that the Schumann resonance is the only thing that is affecting this, but if you think about these, a vibrational frequency, which we're all made of, vibrating at specific hertz, and if it's constantly in flux, especially at certain ley lines or sacred spots on this planet, or places in the woods or whatnot, it's because these events and these sightings and these things sort of seem to happen in the same areas. If you do an analysis, like, I'm sure there's different ones happening in different places, but you sort of get this phenomenon happening more often than not in the same sort of spots on the planet. So, and I could probably, my best guess is to say that the Schumann resonance that's been going crazy is even more fluctuating than these sort of areas where these paranormal phenomena are reported. So, if you think about that, fluctuations of Schumann resonances, frequencies, vibrations, it's not hard to say that other dimensional realities that their base rate may be at a slightly different frequency than what our Earth is. But then when those two frequencies harmonize, and what are the mechanisms to create that to harmonize? I can't tell you. I don't know. But perhaps something's happening with our planet of late in these past few years, the Schumann resonance. So if they harmonize like a tuning fork, those realities would then converge for a moment or two, as a tuning fork might, and then might get out of sync again. And then we get bleed-throughs of other beings, other creatures that can come from these other worlds. And I think the more research is done on the phenomenon itself, instead of shooting it away and shining it away and saying, that's not true. I think we're going to, like I was saying, all of this stuff with the media and everything else, we're sort of going to be forced. The more this starts to happen, as it is, and the more and more reports that keep going on, and the better our technology gets at recording the mechanisms behind this, we're going to research it. We're going to find out what's going on, and we're going to realize that we're not alone. not in the universe sense, but in the multiverse sense.
Do you think it's possible that there already are some kind of whatever it may be, some kind of alphabet agency that's already created a mechanism or a means for people in our existence, in our realm, to go into these other realms? I mean, do you think it's possible that people, I mean, I don't know what else to describe it other than, a secret mission into these other, universes? I mean, do you feel like that's something, I mean, would you be shocked if someone told you, yeah, that's happened?
Well, no, I've already been told that.
Oh.
So no, I'm not shocked at all. Do I believe it 100%? this is where sort of discernment comes in, and you have to say, well, show me the proof. And the proof that it's possible, yes. The proof that it actually exists, I haven't seen much proof other than just so-called whistleblowers blowing their mouth off, saying that that's what happens. So, but again, same thing with whistleblowers about the ET phenomenon. Guys like Bob Lazar been saying this stuff, and now we're actually starting to see the proof. We're actually starting to see tangible evidence that what these guys have been saying for all these years is true. So who's to say that the guy that says, Project Looking Glass is this sort of peering into these other parallel realities using this sort of technology exist? I wouldn't doubt it. Part of me leans towards it existing. Most of me actually leans towards existing, but I still have I have doubt in just the idea that it's as advanced as some of these whistleblowers are saying it is, where we can actually walk through the looking glass into these other dimensional realms and interact and create effects in their realms. Who knows? Like, we know ETs can do that for our realm, but do we have the technology to do that to that extent? I mean, I know we can fly craft around, reverse engineered craft, and to make mass lighter, as I was saying earlier, this new patent that's come out that talks about manipulating gravity waves to reduce the mass of an object so it'll travel faster, more with less resistance, and all this stuff. So we know that exists to a certain extent, but does it exist to the extent that some of these people are saying? I don't know.
Without necessarily, obviously you can't give away their identity or anything like that, but have you been told something by a whistleblower that just really blew you away, the information that they told you? And if they did, I don't know if you can, maybe not the most explosive, but could you maybe share some of the stuff that you've been told that you're allowed to share, that just kind of, when you heard it, you're like, oh my gosh, like it just blew you away a little bit. Do you have any nuggets of information like that you've encountered?
Well, I mean, along this ride, all of it, everything that I've been sharing has been shared and blowing my mind. So, from the $1 trillion black budgets that the Congress sign off on that they don't know what it is, to the idea of secret technology, 0 point energy, so to say, term that we're using, free energy, devices that have been in existence, that are in existence, but just not allowed to come into the mainstream, to, CIA dude seeing an alien through a window, having, with his boss, interviewing the creature to figure out, what its purpose to be here, to telling Eisenhower that the guys at Area 51 they got an alien, and Nixon, who was the vice president at the time, couldn't handle the news, so he had to go. He went in the next room. That was all along my journey. My mind has been blown by these nuggets of information that I have to choose to believe or not believe. The same CIA guy saying that Hitler didn't die in the way we thought he did, that he died in a submarine. And now, since then, there's been even National Geographic specials on this idea and concept. But first time of me hearing it in 2013, to hear that there's a secret group of Nazis that escaped World War II and went to Antarctica and started developing secret technologies. You hear that. When I first heard that from the guy, I was like, yeah, aliens at Area 51, I believe, but Nazis getting to Antarctica and creating secret technology, that's hard to believe. But now, in my world of worlds, and hearing all the information I've been hearing and understanding how the whole deep state came to come online, and how the CIA is basically you know, I shouldn't say the CIA in its entirety, but groups in the CIA are basically former Nazis that are trying to take over the world. You're just like, what? And then you actually see that, I hear this in 2013, and you actually see like remnants of that or elements of that in movies like freaking Avengers, Captain America. And I'm like, what?
Well,
How did that get there?
I was gonna say, when you said that goes full circle from the beginning of our talk to right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, exactly. I have to ask you a few more questions about the whole Hitler thing. So I had again, I've always kind of thought to myself like, oh, did Hitler really commit suicide when they say that he did? And I had heard in the past, or I know that a popular theory was that he went to Argentina and just lived out his life there. But that's
what the CIA guy told me.
Well, so the CIA guy told you that he went to Argentina and then eventually went to Antarctica. Is that?
No. He died in Argentina.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but a subgroup that actually broke ties from Hitler. That was more into the occult and into they actually were developing technologies like UFO based technologies and went to Antarctica and kept developing stuff. And then a lot of them were in communication with it's just going on a whole other tangent, but basically, that's what he told me. And that was stuff that I heard in 2013. I was like, all right, we're not putting this into the interview. People are going to think this is crazy. And now, years later, it's kind of plausible. Yeah, I think that's we've heard that narrative before. What's going on here? I didn't put it out there, but maybe this guy and other people other whistleblowers have talked, and I just try to corroborate what I know, what the experiences that I have, and the information I know. Like last time, I think I told you about the guy that talked about, he's from the White Hats, the Navy guy. And then all of a sudden you hear a couple of years, that was also 2013. And now you're hearing, Q coming online and we are the White Hats and we're doing this work. So it's like, you look at these nuggets and you're like, all right, I thought that guy was total bullshit, but now we're actually seeing actual things show up in our, ethers, in our news and in these keywords that you just don't believe at the time, but later they sort of prove themselves to be kind of real.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, so I guess I guess I just want to ask one more question about the Antarctica thing. So did he believe, or did he say that basically the Nazis that escaped Antarctica, they basically were kind of more into the cult, and does he believe that they were able to get in touch with EDs, or were they able to get in touch with some kind of force or something like that? And did they eventually leave, or are they there?
No, they're there.
Wow.
Why do you think Antarctica has so much secrecy behind it? Why aren't we allowed to fly over Antarctica at certain points? Well, there's no fly zones, and there's a lot of craziness around Antarctica, and that's going to be coming out in the coming years.
Antarctica there was always something so mysterious to me about that whole continent. I mean, it's a gigantic continent, and like, it's so unexplored. I mean, no one even really, I personally don't really think about it that often. And I know a lot of flat earth people believe that, the reason why it's a conspiracy is because that is the edge of the earth, or, I guess if you keep going, and that's what they say.
Sure. Yeah, I know.
And I know that the flat earth, they're I don't know how active they are now, but I know at least a year or two ago, they were a very active community online. So I
think they've been debunked enough that they're kind of keeping their heads down a little bit now.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't mean to, offend the flat earth people, because I know they're out there, but I have wondered. I think the whole Antarctica aspect, I think that there really are legitimate questions like, what the heck is this? Like, why I
Yeah.
mean, why are so many flight patterns not around there? Why do we not really see much about it? I mean, we see, the outskirts, we see this thing is happening here or there, but it seems so mysterious as a continent. I mean, for how large it is, it seems like there's very little information that's come out about it.
Hmm. Well, that's why I'm saying we're gonna door's gonna be open. It's starting to be open slightly here. The awareness. A lot of people are kind of like you, just saying, "Hey, that there's a lot of weirdness around this. What's going on?" And that's where it starts. And then the more we pry, the more secrets, the more whistleblowers can come out and sort of like, all right, now, and a lot of them have been talking for a long time, but nobody's been listening. Nobody's been paying attention. So the more we start paying attention to this and saying like, oh, this is what, okay. Now it's starting to make sense.
I think it took a while. I mean, I think it took a while for society to catch up to these people to really, start listening to what they were saying.
Look at me when in 2013, and I'd already been deep in the peanut butter for about 5 years, and I hear this guy talking about Nazis in Antarctica. I laugh. I'm like, I better leave that out of the interview because nobody's going to believe anything this guy's saying if I put that out there. And here we are, 5-6 years later from that, we're like, oh yeah, we're getting, that Antarctica talk. It might be real.
Yeah. I mean, are you familiar at all with what was his name? Admiral Byrd, the guy that did that expedition?
that's what my guy went deep into that.
Yeah, I mean,
he got ruined. The Nazis ruined him and sent the whole fleet back. In pieces, the remaining bits.
So that's what the CIA guy told you what happened, because I know there's a couple different stories that happened where it makes more sense now that I'm actually trying to think, because I remember there was one version of the story where he says he ran into the Aryans and people thought it was the alien Aryans, but now, I mean, literally if it was the Nazis there, I mean, I could see that too, where he's like, I ran into the Nazis and just called them Aryans in the report.
What CIA guy said it was the Nazis, and they had developed almost like laser beam technology. And they were able to outgun Admiral Byrd's force, and that's why he got destroyed and sort of went back. And they were basically told, get out of here, leave us alone, and don't mess with us. And they've been sort of doing their stuff behind the scenes for a long time. And just like, okay, don't come near here, and or we're gonna blow you out of the sky. Man. And maybe that's where this no-fly zones and these other things, that all the secrecy. I'm sure they've had conversations with world leaders and probably said, don't mess with us. And this may go all the way up to the highest point of this, these majestic clearances. And these are the people. Who knows? Maybe these are the people that are really running the world. With all the media and big money and, the whole system, that whole hierarchy system. Maybe they're the ones, I don't have any direct proof of any of this stuff, but maybe they're the ones that are in charge of all of it, like we were talking about before, on a greater level. My CIA guy didn't go into that. He just said, in Area 51, he uncovered these documents because he was told to go there and basically get the latest information, because the information flow had stopped from Eisenhower. So Eisenhower told him and his boss, I want information, get everything you can. So they were let into the Area 51 vaults, so to say. And he was getting all this, for 2 days, him and his boss were just reading all these files in this room. And going through it all. And then he had to report back to Eisenhower. So he said these were all reports. The Admiral Byrd report he read, the alien was actually there, he saw, but he had a whole lot to say about Nazis, and he was adamant about Nazis. Like, don't ever trust a Nazi or something. He hated the Nazis. It was crazy.
Well, that literally does sound like the plot of the whole Captain America aspect of the
I
Avengers. I
know.
mean, that literally
I
is
know.
it. Where
This was
basically,
this was before the event. This is before Captain America was released, I think. When
yeah,
I
and
have
I'm
to look back to see what year it was, but when I saw that, I was like, "Holy shit! This is
yeah.
exactly the stuff my guy was talking about."
I mean, that's literally exactly what happens. I mean, in the first Avenger film, the Captain America film, which is called the first
Yeah,
Avenger. I mean, he
right.
literally there is that side group of the Nazis, the Hydra, and then they
Yeah,
eventually
I know.
infiltrate the
It's
American.
crazy.
I mean, it's a whole kind of. I mean, I guess I've always heard it described as like the Fourth Reich. This idea of
Yeah,
like the next one after the failed Hitler's third one. But
right.
yeah, I mean that is. I mean that sounds fascinating. I guess one more thing I wanted to ask you about is: are
Sure.
there other, I guess, theories out there that you've come across or been told that you think are lesser known, but that you also believe people would actually be really interested in hearing? And if so, like, what is that theory? Because I mean, I feel like a lot of the big theories they get a lot of airplay, so to speak. Right? There's a lot of them get a lot of talk, but have you come across any where you feel like you haven't really heard a lot of other people report about them?
Well, I mean, we covered a lot in this interview. I don't know. We covered Antarctica, Bigfoot, hybridization, media being controlled by the higher ups. Who knows? May even be Nazis. Going all the way to that craziness. Hillary Clinton knowing about the ET thing and trying to find out and do her own digging. So she, the Rockefeller Initiative. If anyone wants to Google that, we went into that. We covered a lot, dude. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else that I could think of that we haven't covered in this interview. This is going to be like the deepest peanut butter interview of all time.
I know. Well, you combine it with the last one. I mean, somebody's got to have quite a bit of information to listen to.
Well, hopefully, these interviews are, chargers for people to say, "Oh man, that's crazy," and then go do your own research. That's again talking about self-empowerment. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Marcus's word for it. Go do your own research, and a lot is on the internet. But yeah, going on, setting up an interview with the next CIA guy whistleblower who's on his deathbed that wants to talk. Go do that. That's what I did. It's you have to do the groundwork, so to say, and not just read a bunch of articles on the internet. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
But that's where it started for me, and I got unplugged from the matrix really fast, sort of connecting the dots and actually wanting to like really find out what's happening. And that's when I started, doing my documentary work.
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there's also that element of like just asking people, just emailing them. Like there was a person that probably you've probably had a lot. Well, obviously you've had a lot weirder interactions where people have done really kind of, you feel really uncomfortable if someone's following you or looking through your stuff or whatever. But I had one guy like that one time where I was doing a little bit of research and it was a really weird situation. Like I was exchanging emails with this guy and I got weird responses. And then he died in a really mysterious way in Vegas. And ever since then, like I've heard some other people talk about that subject. And I haven't really touched it a lot because I just thought like, whoa, this is like a little too sketchy for
What's
me.
the subject? Can you just say the subject?
Yeah. So the subject was there was this guy that, and this might sound stupid, but this guy he's alleged to believe to be like Michael Jackson. He's connected to Michael Jackson, and like that's for sure. Is that he's for sure connected to him. And a lot of people made videos where they're like, "Oh, this guy is Michael Jackson." So I found him online and I started emailing him. And I just got the weirdest vibe when I was emailing this guy. Like things he was saying back to me were just really weird. And like, I don't want to describe it. It was just a very weird feeling. And things that he was responding back to me, just saying, just really was bizarre. And then we're exchanging emails. I asked him if he and I could do an interview. And then like, yeah, he passed away. Like he died in like really weird circumstances in like Las Vegas last summer. And it was really weird. Like I emailed him. He had an email that was at a domain name. So it wasn't like at Gmail or at Yahoo or whatever. And like his email had already been turned off like really fast after he passed away. And like, it's really weird. Like his website's still live, but he did a lot. It was like a really weird situation. And I'll probably eventually I'm gonna have to do a deep dive into that to kind of see what's up with that. But because I've talked to that guy, I also talked a little bit to you remember that cult Heaven's Gate, the one that believed in the Haley Boppat comet. I also talked to
yeah.
They still
long time ago.
You know, you might find these people interesting. So there's like 2 people that are alive that are from that group that still run their website, and they run like the group. And if you go to the email, like they'll respond back to you. And I exchanged some emails with the guy that's responding to the emails. And I also too got like a really weird feeling. And I asked them, you know, like, how come you didn't go up and this and that? And he kind of responded back. I asked him if he could also do an interview, and he basically said at least to me, he said he doesn't do media responses, but yeah, that was also weird. I don't know. I don't know how far deep I want to go into. I don't know if I'd want to interview the people you've talked to, because I feel like, God, geez, like I don't want any trouble, but I don't mind talking about this stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd have to cross that bridge when I get to it, though.
Man, yeah. No, there's all kinds of crazy cats out there, and who knows? You know, I've dove into this world and different aspects of it, you know, in the higher levels, as far as, you know, as far as these government cover-ups. And yeah, it was, man, when I was producing the Citizen hearing, it was dicey, just the weird things that would happen and all the crazy, like, not coincidence, like just weird stuff that you're just like, I don't feel comfortable, man, this just doesn't feel comfortable. Like, I know there's something more people watching, or just weird stuff. And then kind of finishing that, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that kind of thing anymore. I don't want to go digging under rocks that may be contaminated. So that's when I sort of shifted gears, and I started doing my series on, you know, more the consciousness based stuff, and actually, you know, having interactions with these extra dimensional beings, and figuring out more the energy behind it, and how to self-empower myself, and not get into situations like that.
Yeah. And I mean, even still, you're still trying to avoid that stuff, and it still finds you. I mean,
and I still, you know, get shot at in Guatemala or whatever.
Yeah. So
I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, so for that stuff, I mean, there is, I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, I mean, you've probably had so many weird things and sketchy situations where you're like, this is really weird. And obviously too, I'm sure for even in your situation, I mean, people have probably just straight up told you a bag of lies just to just throw you off.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, you know, that's what's weird about that world too. It's like, okay, if this whole big thing is all shrouded in secrecy, and it's like, who do I, you know, trust? I get calls. Oh, this guy says, oh, he has the secrets of anti-gravity and has been working on these things, and hey, come meet him. And then you're like, okay, I'm ready to meet. And then it's like, well, I can't meet today, maybe tomorrow. And you're just like, well, let's meet tomorrow. And yeah, it's just that kind of BS all over. And it's just like, all right, I'm not going to waste my time. You know, there's other researchers out there that are going after that stuff, which is fine. I root them on. My buddy Jeremy, you know, with Lazar stuff and his stuff, you know, he's weeding through a lot of that stuff, and I'm just sort of like, yeah, I'm tired of the craziness and mysteries, the potential life-threatening situations. You know, that's not for me.
And I'm sure too, you know, some of these people, you know, I mean, even if they're not intentionally lying, I mean, there's probably so many, for lack of a better term, just weirdos or whack jobs that are just telling you something. And, you know, it's hard. I mean, I guess if I was in your situation, it'd be very hard to discern right off the bat who's just totally nuts and who's telling the truth. Because even sometimes, like what you're saying, I mean, as some guy off the street walked up to you and they said something like, if some guy walked off the street and told you the things that we've talked about tonight, and he was a homeless guy, you think he was a crazy person, right? you just walk away from him, right?
Yep.
If he started saying this, you'd be like, okay, buddy, and you just walk away. But so I mean, yeah, if somebody is interacting with you or talking to you, communicating with you, I mean, it's hard to tell. I imagine right off the bat, and then you're driving 3 hours to go to somebody's house, and you sit down, and then they want to chat about this or that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I imagine would be very exhausting.
It is, yeah, it is exhausting, and then you don't know, and then you sort of ask for, I've been in a lot of odd situations, especially at that time. Well, I guess I would still, from some people's perspectives, be in odd situations if I'm hanging out. Like this past week, I was hanging out at this channeler's house, and she's channeling space aliens and telling me, the history of the human race. Through the seeding of it and all that stuff. So some people might find that really odd, but that to me that's way safer than actually trying to meet with somebody who says they have ties to Putin, and Putin wants to interview me and about the citizen hearing, and through some KGB guy, and you're just like, whoa, wait a minute. And that's probably not true, but if it is, even if it's only like 1% true, do I need to worry about, my life? What's going on here? So, yeah, these are some of the situations I've been in, and it's all crazy and fun, but I prefer the talking to the girl who's talking to the space alien that's, telling us that we live, we're offspring of these beings from the Anunnaki. That's way more fun, and I can have a good laugh about that, and I don't have to take it so seriously either. I don't have to worry about, is it true or not true? It doesn't matter when you're talking about that stuff.
And I mean, you also have less likelihood of getting kidnapped. If there's 5 Russian guys, oh hey, come down this alleyway, and Putin's in that car over there. It's like, okay,
right?
Jeez.
Exactly. I'd rather be worry about getting taken in the middle of the night up to a spaceship. That's about all I have to worry about. And if that happened, I'd be so stoked. That'd be awesome. So that's the extent of my worries these days. Way more chill.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the Anunnaki and Putin a little bit. There used to be a guy on YouTube, I don't remember his name, but he would post a lot of videos about Putin's war on the Anunnaki in Syria. Have you heard of that?
No.
So this guy would post a lot.
But again, fascinating. I'd love to check it out, because you know what? There might be some nuggets in there that connect the dots to my wacky world.
Well, because this guy...
I'm always looking for the connections.
I mean, because this guy, all of his stuff was talking about how, Putin's a good guy, and Putin's really leading the war against the Anunnaki to protect humanity. And the first time I came across that video, I was like, whoa, like this, like what? like I heard terms where I was thinking to myself, like, wait a minute, we're talking about the planet Earth, right? Like, I was hearing things and I was like, what? But I don't know. I mean, like you were saying, though, I mean,
well,
who knows?
We may, we're laughing now, and 20 years later, we'll be like, hey, did you know that 20 years ago, Putin actually saved the human race from the Anunnaki that were trying to, try some bad stuff. Yeah, you never know. So keep an open mind.
I mean, it might be like how how we look at people that used to use lead paint as morons. Like, oh, they used lead paint and they had asbestos. It was fake snow in the Wizard of Oz, and we think, wow, like those people were so dumb. Then people 30 years from now are going to be like, wow, people used to put a cell phone directly next to their head when they talked.
Right.
Like, yeah. No wonder why everybody had cancer, or so many people had.
Exactly. That's how it works. We don't know until we know. That's why we shouldn't laugh at the people 30 years ago drinking lead paint, because we think of us now. Exactly. We're all just, that's why I say always keep an open mind to anything, because it's again, we have to stay in this dimension. We can't let our brains leak out and completely, evaporate into the ether. We have to sort of keep one foot grounded into this reality. But if we can keep one foot grounded in this reality and the other foot just into the infinite of potential possibilities, then we're not getting stuck anywhere. We can sort of, we're not going to get stuck in any one set of belief systems, is what I'm trying to say. And that goes for anything from, the ideas of ETs, and I'm willing to. I'm sort of leaning towards the idea of ETs and this whole thing, this whole story I've been creating as being the truth. But you know what? If a new discovery came out tomorrow that said all of that was BS, and it could prove to me and say, oh, well, I had it totally wrong, then I'll adapt that. That's how open-minded I am. I'm open-minded enough to be proven wrong. And I think if we can all approach life and belief systems and religions and things like that in that way, then then it doesn't become an identity. It doesn't become an egoic must, and we stop fighting for my way is the only way, or my way is better than your way, and then we're like, oh, we can relax a little bit and then unite in that sense, because a lot of this separation that we have on the planet is just people getting hung up in their ideas of the way it has to be, or the way it should be, or the way they believe it to be. And that's where we run into issues.
I think you're 100% correct. Well, Reuben, I think this was a very good topic. I don't know if I'd even call it perfect. I mean, obviously I'd love to have you on again. We'll have to think about some topics, and this was a good one.
We covered quite a bit.
We covered
quite a bit. Awesome.
All right, man.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, Marcus, and look forward to our next crazy conversation whenever it is.
All right, sounds good, Reuben. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye.
All right, bye.